back to this Real America's Voice news break. I'm Terrence Bates. One can argue the fountain of youth is inside of you. The ability to slow aging and live a healthier lifestyle is as basic as stimulating your cells. My next guest has made a life and a business out of doing just that. John Jubilee is the founder of Energized Health. He joins me this morning with more. John, always good to see you.
Great to see you, Terrence.
So let's get right to it. Cellular hydration, that really is the fountain of youth in your estimation.
Well, it really is, Terrence. Think about it. Any farmer or any gardener knows, how do you have healthy plants? How do you have a healthy farm? How do you have a healthy garden? It's all about hydration, right? If you don't water the plant, next thing you know, first it shrivels and then it dies. And it's the same with us, Terrence. If we're not hydrated, we're going to shrivel, and then we're going to be in pain, and then we're going to die. So cellular hydration is the fountain of youth.
And it's a way to help people transform not only their bodies, but also their minds. And you and I have talked about that quite a bit, but that's also part of the healing process. It's not just the physical, it's also the mental. And then you can add in the spiritual if you'd like.
Well, it really is. God made us, He made us a spirit. We live in a body, and then we have our soul, which is our mind, our will, and our emotions. And we need to be healthy in all three of those. Think about, Terrence, the fact that if somebody, a lot of times when someone loses a spouse of many decades that they've been married to, it's common for them to die within 1 year, the other person. And why? Because their mental and their spiritual side is so sad, it just wants to go be with the other person. And so there is such a connection between the mind, the body, and the spirit. The average life expectancy of someone who retires, so when they have their life is tied up in their work and they retire, they die within 7 years. Well, why? Because they lost their purpose in life. It's not even because they had a physical decline. It's because their spirit is broken from losing its purpose, and the mind is sad from not active anymore like it used to be on that job every day. So we need to be healthy in our mind, our body, and our spirit. But Terrence, I'll give you a couple quick numbers in the Bible here. Abraham lived to be 175 years old, and then he had a son named Isaac. He lived to be 180 years old. And then Isaac had a son named Jacob. He lived to be 147 years old. Interestingly, I could make a case. The reason that Jacob didn't live as long, he thought Joseph was dead for 14 years. It broke his father's heart. And so he lived about 30 years less, than his father and his grandfather. So there is such a mind-body connection with us. We got to be at a cellular level, and we have to be healthy in all three areas.
Let's talk lifestyle real quickly. You've seen people get back to doing things like hiking and biking, dancing, golfing, all the things that they thought they had to give up forever as a result of a body decline. So how does cellular hydration make that possible, even after years of joint pain or fatigue or other sorts of issues?
Well, what happens here is when we get our intercellular hydration, we regrow our cartilage. And so now our joints are back how they were when they were 17 years old. So the only reason people stop hiking or dancing or doing the things they love is because they don't have the physical strength that they used to have. But do you know that muscle is 3 parts water? It's 3 parts water, and it's 1 part protein. So it's 3 times more important to have cellular hydration if you want to have lean muscle than it is even to eat protein or lift weights. That's the power of cellular hydration. And so we have clients in their 80s and 90s, Terrence, that are gaining 10, 15 pounds of solid muscle. They're climbing 7 mountains. They're running these half marathons. We had a 92-year-old guy. He won the rowing championship for 70 and over at 92 years old. We got an 85-year-old guy that he qualified for the Olympics pickleball, 55 and over, 85 years old.
Oh, my goodness.
We really can be healthy and do the things we love at any age, but we got to get healthy at a cellular level.
John Jubilee, EnergizedHealth.com. Go there and find out more information. Always a pleasure, my friend. Thanks for being here.
And warning, if you're easily triggered by robust and blunt political discussions, this is not for you. If you need a safe space or an echo chamber, this is certainly not for you. The feelings generated by me can have profound and lasting effects, like exuberant feelings of American pride, great confidence in America's future, and the unwavering belief that America is the greatest nation on earth. Kicking off the live broadcast and Real America's Voice and MTN and reaching a growing global audience, this is, my friends, the Steve Gruber Show, and here are three big things you need to know this hour. Number one, I've been out of the chair for a few days, as you know, and boy, it sounds like it got a little nutty around here. Bad storms and stock market theatrics, so we'll be cleaning up and getting going today. Number two, after getting delayed by some antics last week, the House is back in stride and pursuing the Trump agenda. Full steam ahead, everybody. Hang on. And number three, so the doom and gloom crowd, very disappointed and dejected today. Black Monday hit a giant anticlimactic wall. Black Monday didn't happen. Yeah, Jim Cramer. All wrong again, and so were scores of other so-called experts. Now, having said that, the bouncy ride is certainly not over. In fact, Dow Futures this morning, just looking at the chart there, up 800. Up 800. So the Dow, NASDAQ, and S&P 500 all in the green in pre-market trading. Look, 2025 will be a year of big ups and big downs and a lot of big surprises, too. And on that, you can bet the farm. Big changes come with big challenges. But today, Democrats are deeply disappointed that Wall Street didn't go full Chernobyl to start the week. It's what they were cheering for. The rest of us are cheering for America. Last year, the majority of Americans agreed that the country was headed in the wrong direction, and 77.5 million voted to shake things up. So they reelected President Donald Trump. And you know, that's exactly what he's doing, shaking things up big time. The headlines are sounding the alarm. The markets are going through some significant turbulence, and as a result of President Trump's Liberation Day plans. What's the plan? To make America great again. By demanding that the rest of the world pay up if they want access to our markets, or at least be on the same level playing field. Americans want to see a thriving Main Street, healthy hometowns, not shuttered businesses and skyrocketing unemployment. And to do that, we've simply got to get jobs back in America, and we've got to reduce the trade deficit. We have to bring jobs and business back home to America. And that's what Donald Trump is doing. I have faith in his plan, even if it means we've got to endure some bumps along the way and, yes, suffer a little bit. Keep in mind that the headlines are failing to paint the whole picture, which is very predictable, by the way, from the left. But when the facts are there for all to see, it's hard to argue what is happening. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent wiped the floor with NBC's Kristen Welker when he pointed out that there's a lot more to the story than is being reported. Listen to this.
Kristen, what I like is data. And if we look at data from President Trump's first term, and there's a big study that just came out from a group of economists, mostly at MIT, that showed that a 20% tariff on China led to a 0.7% tax or price level increase over 4 years. I think that's pretty good. If we can take in 20% in tariffs and it's a 0.7% increase, and Kristen, the little publicized story this week, everyone wants to look at the stock market going down. You know what else went down? Oil prices went down almost 15% in 2 days, which impacts working Americans much more than the stock market does. Interest rates hit their low for the year, so I'm expecting the mortgage applications to pick up.
Well, just to be very clear, though, I mean, during President Trump's first terms, the cost to Americans was nearly $80 billion in new taxes due to his tariffs. The prices did go up on everything from washing machines to tires.
Well, no, but let's go back. The aggregate number was 0.7, so we can discern the individual things. Also, households saw real net wages go up. So if wages go up faster than prices, which is not what happened over the past 4 years, that's why the bottom 50% got eviscerated.
Bam. You see that? Cool as a cucumber. The Treasury Secretary understands President Trump's master plan, and his faith will deliver it to the American people. Bessent says the Trump administration is focusing on the needs of the working class, working people, the middle class in this country. He's willing to let the Wall Street executives take a little hit if it means the average American can afford a house, put gas in their cars again, and put food on the table. Listen to these shocking statistics.
the top 10% of Americans own 88% of equities, 88% of the stock market. The next 40% owns 12% of the stock market. The bottom 50 has debt.
Yeah.
They have credit card bills, they rent their homes, they have auto loans, and we've got to give them some relief.
We've got to give them relief. Now, if I remember correctly, and help me out if I'm wrong, but I think the popular slogan from the left has been, and still is, eat the rich. But now they're all in a tizzy that stockholders are in a panic? Weird. Sounds pretty hypocritical to me. We may very well be in a bear market. It's not the end of the world. We've seen this before. In fact, as recently as 2022, the market was not doing very well. The difference was that the administration at that time wasn't working overtime behind the scenes to secure the best deals for the American people on the global stage going forward like they are now. President Trump believes there's no better time to do the right thing than right now. We were going to have to confront our trade deficit at some point, and I trust that he's the man to do the job. Here's a bit more. Listen.
We're going to have one shot at this, and no other president's going to do this, what I'm doing. And I'll tell you what, it's an honor to do it because we have been just destroyed. What they've done to our system. You know, we have $36 trillion of debt. And the reason is that people allowed it to get that way. So we'll be talking to China. We'll be talking to a lot of different countries. And I think, you know, if we can make a really fair deal and a good deal for the United States, not a good deal for others. This is America first. It's now America first. And we didn't put America first. We put America last. The people that were in the Oval Office put America last, and we're not going to stand for it.
Nerves of steel. He sees the job that needs to be done, and he's going to do it until it's done right. He's not going to stop. This is a man who doesn't have to worry about trying to pander to the elites to win another term. He's diving headfirst into a high-risk, high-reward endeavor that could be the thing that puts America back on top to stay. Here's those nerves of steel I'm talking about. Listen to this.
How do you ensure, Mr. President, that these tariffs don't drive U.S. trading partners into the hands of the Chinese?
I'm not worried about it. I'm not worried about it. If they want to be in the hands of the U.S., they don't want to be in the hands of the Chinese. And the Chinese have turned out to be really not very good at that. People that are with us, they're with us. But we cannot be taken advantage of any longer. I used to watch these deals for years. I've been talking about it for years. You know, I've been talking about it for 35 years, how our country is being ripped off. I mean, 30 years ago it was Japan, then it was something else, then it was another group, then it was China. China's doing the best job of it, frankly, and it's just not going to happen.
Yeah, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. In fact, he's so confident in that he is raising the stakes against China a few more notches. I'll have that when we come back. But he is going to turn up the heat on China. China is not winning this hand. America is. Good to be back. It's the Steve Gruber Show. I hope you're not easily triggered. If you are, well, sit back and enjoy either way. I'll be right back. How sad is it that these people sit there and root against this country? How sad is it that those on the left sit there and root against America? Cheer on a market crash. Oh, it'll be great for politics. Horrible for the American family, but great for politics. Looking across the board, the Dow Jones, the S&P, the NASDAQ, the Russell, the Nikkei, the Euro stocks, the DEC, right across the board, green, 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 green. Green. In fact, it looks like the Dow could be up 800 points today. You see, this is what putting America first looks like. And Donald Trump is raising the stakes against China. Everybody's trying to say, look, these tariffs are creating this worldwide problem. Not for us. Globally, yes. Stock markets are down globally. Hong Kong was down 13% to start the week. Their stock exchange, 13% down. That's a big hit. And we've gone into bear territory on the S&P and the NASDAQ. We understand that, but now it looks like we're rallying back, adjusting. And coming up in a little bit here, Nick Hopwood's going to join me. We're going to talk about this in detail, all right? Meanwhile, Donald Trump not stepping back, not laying down. In fact, he's going to raise the stakes on China. Listen to this.
With China, as you know, against my statement, they put a 34% tariff on above what their ridiculous tariffs were already. And I said, if that tariff isn't removed by tomorrow at 12 o'clock, we're putting a 50% tariff on above the tariffs that we put on. So they've gone for years. They've become a rich country because of people, again, that were in the White House that allowed this to happen. Hundreds of billions of dollars a year they'd make on us on trade, and it shouldn't be that way.
I think that would take the tariffs on Chinese-made goods to over 100%. 100%. You want things built in America? Do that to China. Things will be built here in America. By the way, the investment. While I was gone out of town on spring break with the kids, $7 trillion, the last number I saw, of new investment earmarked for the United States, car factories and other facilities, microchips, everything coming back to America. And look, Donald Trump clearly not messing around, and already deals being made, like I said, wins being handed to the American people. Listen to a former chief of staff for the president. Here it is.
Yeah, well, he says over 50 leaders have reached out, tried to get calls with the president. I think Vietnam is one that could, they've also said they want to go to zero. I think Taiwan could very quickly add in some things like more purchases of American-made weapons, spend more on defense. I think, John, we're going to have a domino effect of countries all over the globe shaping up, or they're going to have to live with a permanent situation where America is no longer going to be the chump and take what other countries are dishing out at us. And President Trump, like he said, is resetting the global trading system, and he's doing it in a remarkably short period of time.
A remarkably short period of time. You know, I don't imagine that Donald Trump's biting his nails in fear. Look, it's early in the morning in Washington. He's up early every single day. Not in fear. No, he's working, and he's seeing the rewards of this calculated risk because he knows, and we know, the tariffs are just one piece of the puzzle for his America First agenda. The administration is slashing taxes, cutting back on regulations, weeding out waste, fraud, and abuse to lower government spending. That's key. Securing our borders, and it's all going to add up to one big economic boom. Trump 2.0 is all about going all in. All in. He's not halfway in. He's not 1 foot in, 1 foot out. No, he's all in. He's been wanting to do this for decades. Don't believe me? Listen to this.
And yet we let Japan come in and dump everything right into our markets and everything. It's not free trade. If you ever go to Japan right now and try to sell something, forget about it, Oprah. Just forget about it. It's almost impossible. They don't have laws against it. They just make it impossible. They come over here, they sell their cars, their VCRs, they knock the hell out of our companies. And, hey, I have tremendous respect for the Japanese people. I mean, you can respect somebody that's beating the hell out of you, but they are beating the hell out of this country. Kuwait, they live like kings. The poorest person in Kuwait, they live like kings. And yet they're not paying. We make it possible for them to sell their oil. Why aren't they paying us 25% of what they're making? It's a joke.
There you have it. What was that, 30 years ago? A young Donald Trump on Oprah. He knew all the way back then. Here's another throwback for you. Democrats used to be on board with this kind of policy as long as it wasn't coming from Donald Trump, whether it was 1996 or 2018 or any time. Listen to these top dog Democrats.
How far does China have to go? how much more repression, how big a trade deficit and loss of jobs to the American worker, and how much more dangerous proliferation has to exist before members of this House of Representatives will say, I will not endorse the status quo. And if there's one message that I want our colleagues to understand today and our constituents is that on this day, your member of Congress could have drawn the line to say to the President of the United States, do something about this U.S.-China trade relationship that is a job loser for the United States.
It's also proper for advanced economies like the United States to insist on reciprocity from nations like China that are no longer solely poor countries. Make sure that they're providing access to their markets and that they stop taking intellectual property and hacking our servers.
And there you have it. That was Nancy Pelosi, by the way, 1996. Since that time, they've sold out or fallen victim to Trump derangement syndrome, whatever you want to call it. Not President Trump. He's standing up for what he knows is right. He's not shaken by the stock market's reaction. He's playing the long game to win for you and for me. Those who aren't as confident want to know if he's going to cave. But just yesterday, he told reporters he's not considering any pauses. No pauses, no deals. That's right. This is the consistent message across the administration. It doesn't matter who you talk to there. We're in this all in. Trump is all in on putting America first. For the last several years, we've heard the left and the neocons beat the drums of actual war in Ukraine and elsewhere, yelling from the rooftops that the fight for so-called democracy hundreds of miles away was worth our dollars and our boots on the ground if it came to that. That was not true. They were willing to sell out the American people for literal war, but they don't have the stomach to handle a trade war? Give me a break. It's good to be back. It's good to see America back. Yes, the stock market's a little rattled. It's going to go up today. Some concern, sure. Hang in there, my friends. Hang in there. Have some faith. God bless America. We're doing this together, all of us. It's the Steve Gruber Show. Well, this part of the program brought to you by 1775 Coffee. You deserve more than weak mass-produced coffee. You deserve 1775 Coffee. Single origin, high altitude, hand-picked and roasted for bold, uncompromising flavor. No chemicals, no toxins. Just damn good coffee that fuels your day the right way. Find out more at 1775coffee.com/Gruber. Use the promo code Gruber for 10% off, and every dollar you spend is an entry to win a Tesla Cybertruck and $30,000 cash. Wake up. Stand up for something important. Drink 1775 Coffee. Yeah, get on board the truth train. 1775coffee.com/Gruber. All right, so look, the Supreme Court, a big decision yesterday. Yes, Donald Trump can deport Venezuelan gangbangers to El Salvador. So says the Supreme Court in a 5-4 decision. The 5-4 part caught my attention too. Who's the justice that's standing against Donald Trump? Amy Coney Barrett. She's going to be a problem long term. She is going to be a problem long term. Amy Coney Barrett is a problem and a poor decision, it looks like, by Donald Trump in his first term. Maybe we'll get a chance to replace another justice before this term is over. We'll see. So the Supreme Court 5-4 granted the administration's request to lift the stay and a temporary victory for the Trump administration, they're going to start tossing more people out immediately. I can tell you that. Meanwhile, a bad decision by the Supreme Court. They block a challenge to New York's controversial gun law. You see, after the Supreme Court ruled on guns here a couple of times in the last 20 years, the state of New York went on and put in rules like you have to be in good moral character to have a concealed carry permit. Well, the Supreme Court has decided not to take up this controversial decision by a lower court. They're going to let it stand. Terrible decision. Making John Roberts suspect. You see, this Supreme Court thing is good some days, and other days, they never err on the side of conservatism, do they? They never err on the side of what's best for America, do they? All right. Still to come today, Nick Hopwood is going to be here. We're going to talk about these markets and everything that's going on. How are you looking today? Pretty good, I hope. It's good to be back, by the way. Nice to see you today. I'll take a break. It's the Steve Gruber Show. If you've ever found yourself on a toll road, you know my next guest's work. He invented this thing called Easy Pass. Yeah, you know what it is. You know, it's the fast lane. You know, I'm always the one stuck because we don't have toll roads in Michigan to speak of. But you go to Illinois, man, you got the Easy Pass people, and I'm sitting there throwing $1 and trying to dig change out. David Sentner solved that problem. He created Easy Pass. He's a tech billionaire, serial entrepreneur with multiple successful businesses. He joins me now to discuss everything going on with the economy. David, nice to have you here.
Good morning, Steve. Let me clarify something. I did not invent EasyPass. I created some innovations in the electronic toll collection arena. So specifically, if you ever rent a car and you pay for your tolls electronically, that was my innovation. So,
well, okay.
Yeah. And we need to get you some tolls in Michigan. I think that's should be a high priority.
Well, you know, some people say yes, some people say no, and it depends. I mean, look, our roads are awful. We need to do something around here. But the reason you're here, first of all, let me ask you about the economy right now. You're a tech billionaire. You've been out there. You've been in the mix of Silicon Valley and these folks. You know, the people and the people that are investing in this country, people that are scared right now. We've seen the stock market go down dramatically. It's up, I think, going to be 700 or 800 points to start today. But what was your general take on everything that's happening?
Well, that's great news. I'm really glad you're the first person I'm hearing about this. The market's going to open up higher today, which is super cool because, you know, the past few days has been pretty rough. And everybody's kind of hoping that President Trump knows what he's doing, that he's surrounded by the brilliant advisors that he says he has. And I hold out hope. I think his action is extraordinarily bold and historic. And I really have a lot of faith that I have faith at the moment that this is what he's doing is ripping the Band-Aid off, and it's going to be a great reset for everybody. It just might be a little painful in the short term and maybe only a couple of weeks. And the fact that the stock market's already up higher today, that's very, very reassuring to me.
Well, Scott Bassett says as many as 70 countries have already come calling saying, hey, let's make a deal. So that's a pretty good start. Howard Lutnick, Scott Bassett, these are pretty smart fellas, also billionaires, guys that have done very well, understand the markets, understand the economy far better than the average person. And so we do hope that they're on the right path. One of the reasons I wanted to talk to you, though, today is because of cancel culture. You and your wife, Layla, have launched a new podcast called Erased that'll highlight stories of people who have been experiencing cancel culture, which seems to be over in large part, by the way, because Meta, Facebook, yesterday got rid of their censors, if you will. Twitter got rid of their censors for the most part. I mean, there's still people out there that fool with it, but not the way they did 2 or 3 years ago. I mean, this really impacted you, didn't it?
Yeah, my wife and I have personally experienced cancellation attempts on 3 separate occasions. My wife, the first 2 associated with her school. We own a school in Miami called Centner Academy, and she took some very strong positions on COVID vaccines and mandates, the masking and all that kind of stuff, and got literally global attention. It went to the White House, and the media really tried to take her down. And then myself, more recently, probably associated with that, having to do with a very large donation that we were trying to make to the city of Miami, and that donation got embroiled in a political scandal unconnected to us, but the media, some media specifically, took this as an opportunity to put their foot on our neck with some very faulty reporting, and our reputation has been damaged. There's some real damages here, and we happen to own a company called Erase.com, coincidentally acquired before our own personal controversies, and it's in the reputation management space. We deploy a lot of tactics to improve and repair people's reputations. And then the idea for the podcast, Erased, with an exclamation mark, which launched yesterday with Alan Dershowitz as our first guest, is an opportunity for people to come on and share their own personal stories of cancellation, how they navigated their way through it, how they kept their head on straight, the friends and family lost along the way, the emotional journey and heartache and financial hardships, and it's extraordinarily vulnerable, quite entertaining. I think it's a really important show, and the idea is to shine light on these things because these people have not had an opportunity to share their stories elsewhere. So this is a first of its kind podcast.
First of all, a quick comment on Miami. What a remarkable city. People don't realize Miami is one of the safest, if not the safest, big city in America. So I tip my hat to Mayor Suarez there, who continues a good work there in Miami. But let me talk about cancel culture, because it wasn't just people that got canceled completely. It was people like myself who were basically throttled down, shadow banned, if you will. Couldn't pick up any followers, couldn't get anybody to look at my page because I was in the same place you were, questioning what was going on with COVID, questioning about masks and vaccines and all these things that your wife is doing as well. And just basically making it so nobody could see you. They didn't cancel you outright, they just made you invisible in many ways, people like me. That's just as bad. Did you ever think you would live in a place or a time in America where censorship was the rule of the day?
it's so un-American, and it's bizarre, and what the tactics of the Biden administration were deploying to effectively censor and eliminate the right to free speech by controlling the social media companies, it's just outright wrong. And I would disagree with you. Cancel culture is not over. In fact, I read an article this morning in preparing to come on your show. There's some protesters, left-leaning protesters, and they were asking them what do they want to see in America, and they want to be able to speak freely. So the fact that cancel culture has affected people in the past is really bad for all of us, because it can happen to anybody, left, right, doesn't matter. If people have a reluctance to actually speak their mind, then cancel culture is certainly in as strong force as it has ever been.
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest. It's the First Amendment of the United States Constitution is the envy of the world. I've believed that my entire life, whether it's the freedom of speech, freedom of press, freedom of religion, freedom to gather, all the things within the First Amendment are the envy of the world. And for anybody to say, well, it's okay, if it offends somebody, we should get rid of it. Look, offensive speech is why we created the First Amendment. It wasn't for happy talk. It was for things that made people angry or upset or made them, emotional. That's what the First Amendment was there to protect. And that's what the beauty of America is, the robust exchange of ideas. Anything less than that is un-American, like you said.
It's what's the root cause? Like, how did we get here? And I think this is super complicated. I think it goes back many decades, and a lot of it has to do with the changes in the media, where the media journalists are now not just required to say the who, what, where, when, and why. Now they're allowed to take a position. And then you have the advent of the internet, where they just changed the financial model completely, and then we see clickbait and just the relentless search for profits and just trying to get audiences, and so media outlets almost had to take a position and had to get titillating, and then the social media properties came. It's just really confusing, and it's a real mess. And I'd like to see a rewind where the newspapers and mainstream media is required just to report the news, just simply tell us how it is, and we get to decide our own position.
What a concept. Just tell people some facts. Let them decide. Don't put your hand or your foot on the scale. Wouldn't that be a concept, David? Quite remarkable. By the way, the podcast is Erased. It's a brand new podcast with David and his wife, Layla. People, I assume, can find it in all the usual places.
All the usual places, you name it, we got it. Today's an exciting day. Today we're actually taping Papa John, pizza fame, who he himself ran into some issues with some racist comments years ago. And I understand there's two sides to this story. It may not be exactly as we've been has been shoved down our throats, and that's what's really cool. We're not the judge and the jury, my wife and I, as hosts, but it is an opportunity for people to share their side of the story and let people come to their own conclusion. There is more to every one of these stories.
Papa John has been a guest on this show a number of times from Columbus, Ohio. Good man that he is. David, look, really appreciate you being here. David Sentner, you can look up the podcast Erased. You come back anytime, my friend. Really enjoyed it.
Awesome. Thank you, Steve. Have a great day.
You too, my friend. There you have it. All right, so David Sentner, billionaire. Easy pass for your car. When I come back, Nick Hopwood. We're going to talk about the markets in a moment. For those of you with indigestion from watching the markets bounce all over Thursday, Friday, and yesterday a bit of a reprieve, and today looks like it's going to be in the green, as we talked about. But Nick Hopwood leads a team of certified financial planners at Peak Wealth Management. You know, it's great to have a team of advisors working together to develop a plan for you. And one of his bits of advice is keep to the plan, stay the course. Do not panic. Do not hit the panic button. Nick, welcome back to the program. Nice to see you.
Steve, thanks for inviting me.
Now, you said Sunday was a bit of a tough night because you thought it was going to be down 5% 3 days in a row, but as it turns out, Monday, not too bad at all. It was down 300 points, something like that. Today, looking at the futures, 600, 700, maybe 800 points on the plus side. Have things settled down maybe for a moment?
A little bit. You know, we have a little bit of optimistic action here in the markets, but I just recommend that everyone take a deep breath. Trust the plan is my mantra in times like this. Trust the plan that the president has put together, and trust the financial plan that your advisor has put together. And if your advisor hasn't done a plan for you, then maybe look for a change. Look for somebody different. All right, so let's talk about you got some visuals here for the folks watching on streaming and watching on Real America's Voice and elsewhere. You've got some educational aids, as it were. So let's go through these. Yeah, Steve, this chart is nothing new. We've all seen it before, and I just want to bring it up because I think that this market action is not all about tariffs, even though that's the headline risk. It comes back to the fact that we've been running $2 trillion deficits while tax receipts are up. We really need to cut $1 trillion out of the government spending, and if we have a $30 trillion economy, $1 trillion is a 3% cut, and that's a recession. So, we want the government spending down, but, the hard medicine could be the recession, and the tariff is just, one of the symptoms that we're seeing right now. Sure. I mean, look, during COVID, they were pumping in literally trillions of dollars being pumped into the economy globally. Here in America, in other countries, just pumping in, play money, monopoly money from all over, just pumping it in, pumping it in. Look, that was fantasy land. It wasn't real. It's time for an actual reset, isn't it? Yeah, I think it is for sure. And this is that hard medicine. I think Trump knows that he has to do it immediately. And then we have a nice rebound into next year. And then, the election is in November and people have short memories. So if he has this max pain as early on as possible, the midterms can look good for him. Well, absolutely. I mean, look, we talked about 1987 here in the break just before you came on. And you said a year later it was up 28%. If we're up 28% a year from now, Donald Trump will command the midterms, won't he? Yeah, and Anthony, if we have that chart here, we can show here we go. This is a chart showing 2-day declines in the magnitude that we saw on Thursday and Friday. So we were minus 10% at the end of the week. We don't know what's going to happen 1 year from now, but each time we've had an event like this in 1987, 2008, and 2020, we had huge rebounds 1 year and beyond. And like you said, on Black Monday in 1987, plus 28% a year later. Right. So, I mean, look, we've been through these things before. 2008 and 9 was terrible. 2020 and 2022 wasn't much of a year either, to be fair. Let's be honest with that. We got another chart here as well. Look. Here's where people really make mistakes. I made this mistake once a long time, maybe about 2008 or 9. I got panicked, and I said, put me on the sideline. And all of a sudden, everything came back in, and everything went up, and I missed the upside, right? Happened. Yeah, well, Steve, in 2008, you were a young whippersnapper, so you could have been thinking more opportunistically and adding more in, okay, because you didn't need the money for decades. Correct. But now, imagine if you're retired today, okay? For you, I don't know how far away that is, but imagine, 10 years from now, you're retired, and now we're relying on our portfolio for income. Well, as you can see on this chart, if we need income right now, we don't want to have any market risk. However, if we're looking at the part of the portfolio that we don't need for 10 or 20 years, like at the bottom of the chart, we can be more growth oriented. And that growth account is getting hit right now, but you don't need it for so long, it's okay. So again, you come back to trust the plan. Correct. And for all our retirees, this is the type of plan that we put together where the money that we need in the next 2 years is in the money market and treasury bills. The money that we need in 5 or 10 years can be more moderate risk. Beyond 10 years, we can be more growth oriented. Imagine you're walking through the forest and you see blue skies and everything's fine because your income is good. But, you know, several miles down the road, you know, you've got a raging forest fire going on. But by the time you get to that point in the forest, it'll be green shoots and blue skies again because that portfolio would have recovered.
Yeah, I mean, let's talk about a couple of the fundamentals here. Inflation now, from everything I can read and understand, less than 2%. We haven't seen that in a while. Hiring is on the rise, a bigger jobs number than expected. The price of oil is down. The price of gasoline is coming down. And therefore the price of a lot of things is coming down. So there's no inflation, right? The energy's coming down, and therefore the price of groceries and so forth are coming down. So a lot of the fundamentals in the economy are good. So that leads me to ask the question, will the Fed reduce interest rates? Because if that happens, because some of your columnists say, and I read about how the money on the sidelines wants to come back in badly. We've only got about a minute here, but it looks like there's enthusiasm to come back into the market. If the interest rates are dropped and gas is cheaper and oil's cheaper and energy's cheaper, that'd be a really good time to be in the market, wouldn't it?
It would, especially at these levels after we just wiped out a year of gains. There's no question inflation is going to come in at 0.1 for March. So inflation is coming down, and that gives the green light to the Fed. So Steve, coming into this year, we thought there might be 1 or 2 rate cuts. And now the updated expectations are 4 rate cuts between now and the end of the year. And we know that we want the Fed on our side, right? And so with the lower inflation, it gives them the green light.
Yeah.
So that's another positive for markets going forward.
You can find out more at peakwm.com. You can talk to my friend Nick over there, by the way. You can watch him on YouTube, too. Peak Wealth Management. You can find him, MGMT. Peakwm.com. Look it up. Get a second opinion. Stay the course. Keep the plan. Do not panic. Thank you, Nick. I think you helped some folks out today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Really appreciate it. Look, again, we're going to watch the numbers here through the rest of the program, but they look pretty good right now. I'll be right back. right, here, I hadn't looked at the price of oil in a while. The price of West Texas Intermediate, $61 a barrel. Brent crude, which is basically the benchmark, $64.50 a barrel. Wow, last time I looked, it was in the high 70s to low 80s. So oil prices are cheap today, to say the least. Gas on its way down, $3.19 where I am. $2.85 in Texas, so below $3 a lot of places. Look, energy, cheap energy is the key to a great economy in many regards. Vast quantities of cheap American energy make America run. We should not be relying on foreign countries. We should not be relying on foreign countries that don't like us for energy, and so let that be a lesson to you, America. Speaking of let that be a lesson to you, this part of the program brought to you by my great friends at Hillsdale. History, economics, the great works of literature, the meaning of the U.S. Constitution. Did you study these things in school? Probably, but even if you did, it's probably time for a refresher, wouldn't you say? Time and technology have changed a lot, as you know, but they haven't changed the fundamental truth about the world or our place in it. Personally, I'm really enjoying Hillsdale College's Constitution 101. I'm going back through it again. It's free. It's a 12-lecture course exploring the design and purpose of the Constitution, the challenges it faced during the Civil War, and how it's been undermined for more than a century by progressives and globalists and liberalism in general. You can take the course at your own pace. Whenever and wherever you work, you can look at it. Let's be honest. America needs more citizens who understand the Constitution, obviously. Look at the members of Congress. We need people that are ready to defend our freedoms against the growing reach of unaccountable government bureaucrats. Start Constitution 101 for free. Look, folks, it's free. How do you spend your free time? Learning about the Constitution. You can tell your kids, your grandkids, your wife, your friends. You'll be the smartest person in the world. Just go to gruberforhillsdale.com, gruberforhillsdale.com to enroll. There's no cost, no hassle, just great learning, and it's kind of fun. You'll be great at Trivial Pursuit, I can tell you that. gruberforhillsdale.com. Check that out. All right, coming up in the next program, R.T. Trevino will be here. We're going to talk about oil and gas production in detail in the next hour here on the Steve Gruber Show. Catch it on Twitter, Facebook, Rumble, all those great places. Nice to see you. Good to be back.